The late 2000s and early 2010s marked a pivotal period in the gaming industry, characterized by rapid technological advancements, shifts in player preference, and evolving market dynamics. During this time, the JRPG genre, once a dominant force in gaming, experienced a significant decline in both critical and commercial success. Several factors contributed to this downturn, including technological challenges, cultural disconnects, and competition from Western RPGs. Today, I want to explore the reasons behind the decline of JRPGs during this era, offering insights on how the genre adapted and eventually rebounded. Hello everyone, my name is Fedro and this is cozyfeji, and on this channel we cover a variety of things such as video essays, reviews, JRPGs, and all things cozy gaming. It's kind of interesting to talk to my friends and to the people who enjoy JRPGs during this time period in the late 2000s and early 2010s, where JRPGs were kind of at the butt of every joke. They were mocked, degraded, and people didn't really take them seriously. Granted, also, there wasn't that much of a collection during this era of really standout JRPGs at that time to really push the genre to the forefront. So it's really interesting now in the year 2025 where we're in an era where JRPGs are abundant, and honestly, they're coming out more than ever, and I'm here for it. So it's really interesting to look at this period of time as someone who didn't really experience it and really didn't really care for JRPGs at that time, to really look at it from the outside looking in. So today I just wanted to talk about that weird, interesting gray period for JRPGs, technological challenges, and the HD era. One of the most significant challenges facing JRPG developers in the late 2000s was the industry's transition to high-definition gaming. With the release of Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, players expected games to feature cutting-edge graphics, expansive open worlds, and seamless gameplay. However, many Japanese developers struggled to keep pace with this demands due to a lack of familiarity with HD development tools and techniques. For example, Square Enix, a leader in the JRPG industry, faced difficulties during this period. The development of Final Fantasy XIII exemplified the struggles of Japanese studios. Originally intended as a PlayStation 2 title, the game's transition to HD consoles resulted in prolonged development cycles, bloated budgets, and design compromises. When the game finally launched in 2009, it received mixed reviews, with critics praising its visuals but criticizing its linear gameplay and the lack of innovation. Moreover, Japanese studios are generally smaller and more resource-constrained than Western counterparts. This made it harder for them to compete with studios like BioWare and Bethesda, which had embraced HD development earlier. Games like Mass Effect and The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim set new standards for graphics, player agency, and world building, leaving many JRPGs feeling outdated in comparison. When you look at JRPGs at that time and compare it to a lot of the Western titles at the time, I feel like there can definitely be a graphic fidelity difference for sure. And not only that, I felt like there wasn't that many people really gravitating towards, JRPGs. I feel like at this time, in point in time, first-person shooters were really definitely on the rise, and Western titles were honestly a lot more popular and gained a lot more traction in mainstream. I mean, granted, I'm speaking from the Western perspective. I don't know how it was in Asian countries or other parts of the world. Maybe it was the opposite, but here in the States, people weren't playing JRPGs like that. I can tell you from the IGNs and all the videos of those time, you could definitely see so many jokes coming in talking about JRPGs and just kind of mocking them for what they were and kind of just belittling them to just anime tropes, which I get it. A lot of JRPGs have a lot of anime tropes in it, and sometimes they don't really bode well with people, but sometimes that's kind of the bread and butter of what JRPGs are, and I feel like when you play a JRPG, you're kind of expecting those things. Not only that, I feel like there wasn't that many JRPG titles that were really pushed out. Besides Final Fantasy XIII, I can think of Lost Odyssey on the top of my head at this very moment. I'm not saying that there weren't JRPGs that definitely came out during that time, but they weren't that popular. Of course, Xenoblade Chronicles was another one, or The Last Story, stuff like that that's on the Wii. But a lot of the focus definitely were handhelds at that time. I think the 3DS is starting to pop off a little bit at that time for the Wii, for I guess Nintendo's aspect. But of course the PS3 and the Xbox 360 was also just a weird time in general for gaming, because pricing was really weird. The specs and hardware were definitely getting better, but also I don't think that the catalog of games were really at its like peak when it came to the PS3 and Xbox 360 and Wii U era of gaming. Cultural disconnect and market shifts. Another factor contributing to the decline of JRPGs was a growing cultural disconnect between Japanese developers and global audiences, particularly in North America and Europe. During the 1990s and early 2000s, JRPGs like Final Fantasy VII and Chrono Trigger appealed to Western players with their universal themes, memorable characters, and accessible mechanics. However, as gaming demographics broadened, player preferences began to shift. Western players increasingly favored games emphasizing player choice, open-world exploration, and realistic narratives. Western RPGs like Dragon Age Origins and Fallout 3 exemplify these qualities, offering players extensive freedom and morally complex decision-making. In contrast, many JRPGs clung to traditional design elements like linear storylines, turn-based combat, and anime-inspired aesthetics. While these features retained appeal for hardcore fans, they alienated casual players and newcomers. Additionally, the cultural quirks of JRPGs, including exaggerated character designs and melodramatic narratives, began to feel less relatable to Western audiences. Games like Star Ocean: The Last Hope were criticized for their stereotypical characteristics and awkward English localization, further widening the gap between the genre and global players. I feel like not just in JRPGs, but I also think in anime, I know I'm putting a lot of anime and tied into this because I also am an avid anime fan, but what I found really interesting when it comes to like the 2000s, late 2000s and early 2010s, I feel like the direction and more so, I guess, the direction when it comes to English localization and voiceover work at that time really wasn't the best. I'm not gonna lie that there were definitely some huge standout voice actors at the time, but I feel like the work and I guess the direction that they were given just wasn't the best. And I feel like it definitely docked a few points when it comes to players who wanted to play these games, couldn't really get used to, or just kind of found the voice work just kind of annoying, to say the least. But yeah, I definitely do think that definitely played a factor to it. Some of the voicing work was just interesting. I feel like a common joke and a common example people use, and I feel like it's taken out of context at this point, is the laugh from Final Fantasy X, the very iconic one. But I just find it very interesting that definitely, I feel like the work and the localization definitely played a factor in that aspect when it came to bringing JRPGs to the Western audience. When you find the work or the voice or the word choice kind of off-putting, it kind of does definitely kind of put a distance when it comes to playing the game, and it kind of pulls you out of it for sure. Stiff competition from Western developers. The rise of Western RPGs during this period also contributed to the perceived decline of JRPGs. Developers like BioWare, Bethesda, and CD Projekt Red introduced innovative gameplay mechanics and storytelling techniques that resonated with modern gamers. Titles such as Mass Effect 2, The Witcher 2, and Skyrim redefined the RPG genre, focusing on player choice, immersive worlds, and cutting-edge graphics. These Western RPGs appealed to a broader audience, including players who were not traditionally fans of RPGs. Introducing dialogue trees, branching storylines, and real-time combat systems set a new benchmark for the genre. Meanwhile, JRPGs often remained rooted in turn-based combat and linear narratives, which began to feel antiquated in comparison. The marketing and distribution strategies of Western developers also played a role in their success. Western RPGs were heavily promoted in North America and Europe, with extensive localization efforts and high-budget marketing campaigns. In contrast, many JRPGs suffered from limited marketing outside Japan, resulting in lower visibility and sales. Now, I know the age-old debate of whether turn-based combat is outdated and of the past has still been a topic of discussion today. Whether that's a thing of the past, I don't necessarily agree with. I still think you could find innovative ways to make turn-based combat cool, such as the most recent entry of Metaphor ReFantazio. It does a really great work with re-innovating and adding new elements to turn-based combat. However, at that time, I definitely do think when looking at and researching, I feel like the JRPGs definitely felt kind of run-of-the-mill, very samey, and just kind of like nothing was really added or making new changes to the combat, which made a lot of players kind of turn off and kind of put away from it. They wanted something new and enticing and engaging, and I feel like JRPGs at that time really weren't offering that. And not only that, I feel like there just wasn't that many JRPGs that were being released and published out here in the West. A great example of this is with the Operation Rainfall, where a lot of Western fans were really pushing the idea of getting 3 of these Wii JRPGs here in the States, because honestly at the time JRPG developers and teams and Nintendo, for example, didn't really think that these games would do well in the West. Those games were Pandora's Tower, The Last Story, and the most popular of them all, which is Xenoblade Chronicles, which is now probably Nintendo's biggest flagship franchise in their catalog. So it's just really interesting to know that at that time they really weren't pushing JRPGs like that, and it was the fans and the people who enjoy JRPGs had to really push and force the companies to be like, hey, we're still here, we still enjoy these games, we promise you we will buy and play these games. So it's really interesting that we were at a point in time where we had to really force the developers to really give us the games that we want, and they actually listened, which is something you don't see that often. The rise of mobile gaming and casual audiences. The late 2000s and early 2010s also saw the rise of mobile gaming, which further impacted the JRPG genre. Japanese developers began shifting their focus to mobile platforms, where development costs were lower and the domestic market was more lucrative. Titles like Puzzle and Dragons and Final Fantasy Brave Exvius became immensely popular in Japan, but these games lacked the depth and scope of traditional JRPGs. This shift to mobile gaming reflected a broader trend within the Japanese gaming industry, where console development was deprioritized in favor of handheld and mobile platforms. While this strategy succeeded domestically, it further alienated Western audiences who were more interested in HD consoles and PC gaming. Just a really interesting topic, because this was kind of like the burst time of mobile gaming, and now we're in 2025. There are so many mobile and gacha games, I can't even count anymore. But it's just really interesting to see that. And here in the West, I feel like mobile gaming is still really not really a thing, which is why you see a lot of companies who make mobile games have a PC or console version of it, because here in the West, I really rarely ever see people play on their phones games like that, unless it's like Candy Crush or something. So it's really interesting to know that that shift and focus on just like mobile gaming did ostracize a huge chunk of players here in the West. Adapting to the challenges. Despite these challenges, the JRPG genre began to adapt and recover by the mid-2010s. Developers like Atlas, From Software, and Square Enix learned valuable lessons from the genre's decline, leading to a resurgence in quality and popularity. Atlas's Persona 5 revitalized interest in JRPGs with its stylish presentation, modern themes, hybrid gameplay mechanics. Similarly, From Software's Dark Souls series blended Western and Japanese design philosophies, appealing to a global audience with its challenging gameplay and intricate lore. Square Enix also rebounded with Final Fantasy XV, which embraced open-world exploration, real-time combat, and addressing many of the criticisms leveled at earlier JRPGs. The rise of indie developers also played a role in the genre's revival. Games like Undertale and Octopath Traveler paid homage to classic JRPGs while introducing innovative gameplay mechanics. These titles demonstrated that the core appeal of JRPGs, compelling stories, memorable characters, and unique mechanics remained relevant in the modern gaming landscape. It's really interesting to see around the late 2010s we start to see this shift, and I feel like Japanese developers are starting to realize that they need to really shake things up in order to get both the Japanese and the Western audiences to get on board onto JRPGs again. And I feel like that definitely won in their favor, and we're seeing a huge abundance of JRPGs. Like I said before, within the past 5 years alone, the amount of JRPGs we get every year is always really exciting. And as someone who is a new JRPG fan, it's really exciting to really get to be a part of all the new wave and the renaissance of JRPG genre, and to see all the new games and entries being added into the catalog, such as whether that be remakes or new IP. It's always exciting to see new JRPGs being made. And I want to thank you guys, those loyal JRPG stans who stuck with the genre and continued to play these games, because without you guys, we would not get the games that we have today. The decline of JRPGs in the late 2000s and early 2010s was a result of multiple factors, including technological challenges, cultural disconnects, and competition from Western developers. However, this period also served as a turning point for the genre, forcing JRPG developers to innovate and adapt to changing market demands. By embracing new technologies, modern design philosophies, and global audiences, the JRPG genre has since experienced a renaissance, proving its enduring appeal and relevance in the gaming industry. I think one major takeaway is that I hope that Japanese developers and JRPG fans will continue to support the genre and to continue to make great games, because again, like I said before, I feel like we're in a really, really great spot for JRPGs where we're seeing such amazing stories being told. Like I mentioned before, whether they be old stories that given a new breath of fresh air, or some new IPs that were exploring new innovative ways of the genre. I'm here for all of it all, and I'm really, really excited to see where the JRPG genre goes in the future. If you guys enjoyed this video, please do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And also, if you were a fan during this time period, let me know what your experiences are as a JRPG fan. Were you ridiculed for still being a fan of the genre? Were you so persevering saying, I promise you they're good games? Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Bye!